So I'm going to invite you to come on a little journey with me. So, frequently on Saturday mornings, I go on a hike, and typically I have this walking stick with me. And one of the things I enjoy doing as I'm walking is listening to stories. And a good story will grab you and bring you into it, and so when the action picks up a little faster, I find myself walking a little faster with the story. When it's describing something that's beautiful, all of a sudden the world around me looks a little bit brighter. When it's describing something that's a little bit intense, I notice that I can feel my muscles starting to contract a little bit, get ready for it, because I've been brought into what's going on in the story. And, you know, I don't need the walking stick for balance or anything else like that. It's as much for a memory as anything else. This is a walking stick that was my grandfather's. So it's got some cracks in it, it's got some places where it's got a few splinters, but there is a part of it where, you know, go out and I'll stretch with it out, make sure I move my arms around as I'm going. But again, it's just part of that mental preparation for going on a journey. But have you ever read a story and then you get to the end and you get to the last page and you say, that's not the end? Because there's another book coming that you're going to have to wait for them to finish or whatever it may be, but that's not the end of the story. Or maybe the author just had a different sense of what the end should be than what you thought it should be, and you're sitting there rebelling against what the author says. And the reason I go into this is because a lot of people have said for the end of Mark's Gospel, that's not the end. That can't be the end. So what do I mean by that? So we have the women, and the women have, you know, even when the male disciples of Jesus all fled on the night where he was betrayed, and even Peter, as he's trying to walk behind and trying to be as close as he can, you know, ends up denying him 3 times, and then in his own, whether it's his own frustration or his own fear, flees into the night. But the women are still there at the cross. And they're still there the morning of the resurrection. And so you have these 2 Marys and Salome going to the tomb to do what they can for this person who has meant so much to their life. And we do that too, you know. When we lose a person, we want to honor. We want to say thank you for the life that they've shared with us and for the things that they've meant. And the women on that day figured this was the end of the story. You know, and I think most of us would have too. What's the 2 things that we know are certain? Death and taxes. But they come to the tomb, and the stone is rolled away, and there's a messenger there saying, he's not here, he's gone ahead of you to Galilee. You can almost sense the sequel that's coming. And the women go from the tomb, and they say nothing to anyone, because they're afraid. And Mark's Gospel, the earliest versions of Mark's Gospel we have in there. Now, I have my suspicion why Mark is there, because Mark is still written when many of the disciples are still alive. And so, what's the rest of the story? Well, guess what? You're the rest of the story. You know how the story ends, and the reality is, the end is not the end. The end is not the end. In fact, it's just a transition to it being a different part of the story. And now you have a part to play within that story. You know, one of the things that I love about, and again, Matthew and John and Luke all give a little bit more of the story to, hey, they want to take us to Galilee, or they want Jesus to appear to them in Jerusalem. They want us to already be into that next part of the story. But Mark says, the next part of the story is what you're living right now. fear is not the end of the story. The fact that we're telling this story 2,000 years later, even though the women didn't say anything to anyone, God wasn't going to let the story end there, and God wasn't going to let the story end with them. Because it's not about what we do, it's not about what we bring to the story. Ultimately, this is a story that we've been caught up in. This is God's story, and you have a part in it. You have a part that is there to be written. There's a part there that's there to be lived. It's a journey to go on. And so, I'm inviting you to come on a journey with me. But the best journeys don't take just one day. I know that we live in a culture of instant gratification, where we can say, hey, Amazon, send this to me and I want it tomorrow. Or, if that's too slow for you, I'll just take the download version and I can get it right now. But when was something that was really meaningful that came right now? The best journeys take time. They take living. They take relationships. They take life. You know, one of the things about Easter is not a day. Easter's a season. You know, in the season of Advent, we have this practice of lighting candles. You know, we light a candle as we move through each week, as we move and we get closer and closer to that time of Christmas, and we mark that time as we go. And as I was thinking about this year, I said, you know, why don't we mark our time in these other seasons? Why don't we light a candle and say, where are we on our journey? And so that's what we're going to do. So, I'm going to go get the handy-dandy candle lighter. Because every good journey takes a little bit of movement. Where are we on our journey? We're at the beginning. I think there's wisdom in the early church saying, you know, for the season of Easter, we're going to take 7 weeks. Because we don't understand everything of what it means all at once. We don't grasp everything that happened on that day, the very moment you come. And I know that today is the big day where everybody comes together and we celebrate, and absolutely we should. But I'm also inviting you to not just today, but into this season of learning, what does this resurrection mean? What does it mean that God shows no partiality, as Peter can say to Cornelius? What does it mean when Paul can talk about, I handed on to you what I received? And even though I was a persecutor of the church and I shouldn't have been worthy of it, that God has declared me to be an apostle as well. What does it mean that he's gone ahead of you to Galilee and he will meet you there? So I'm inviting you on a journey. I invite you to come. And if you need to get out your shoes, your walking stick, go ahead and do so. But welcome to Easter. It's not a day. It's a season